All right, everyone, hello and Happy New Year. It's good to see all of you here today. We're now into 2025, and this is our first Lunch and Learn program of the year. Our guest speaker today is Laura Pate, and I'll introduce her in just a second. My name is Marcy Inman. I'm Director of Exhibitions and Educational Programs here at the Irving Arts Center. And again, thank you so much for being here. Lunch and Learn is now into its 11th or 12th year, actually 14th year of this program. So we're happy to see that it's been received well and is robust, and we're able to bring in such interesting speakers. A little bit of housekeeping before I begin with the intro. This microphone is not for amplification. This is actually for recording. We do have a tablet in the back of the room. We're recording this presentation, and it will be up on our YouTube channel in a couple of weeks. We will have time for Q&A after Laura's presentation. And I ask, please, that if you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please raise your hand, and I or another staff member will bring you this microphone so that we can capture all your comments and all your interesting questions on the recording, so everyone can enjoy them and have context for the responses. Okay, so Laura Pate is an objects conservator and owner of Brown Mountain Art Restoration in Dallas. She has 30 years of experience as a decorative arts conservator. Is it conservator? Mm-hmm. Thank you. I knew that. Yeah, I'm still trying to recover from the holidays. Okay. For 24 of those years, she has owned and operated Brown Mountain Art Restoration, a company in Dallas specializing in the conservation and restoration of ceramics and porcelains, paintings, gilded frames, and objects, as well as public art. Laura was formerly a ceramic artist and holds a BFA in art history from the University of Texas at Austin. She has been a professional associate of the American Institute for Conservation since 2013 and has a specialty certificate in the Care of Decorative Objects from the International Preservation Studies Center. In 2006, she participated in an angel project for the Museum of Biblical Art, assisting in the treatment of several plaster sculptures on loan to the institution that were damaged in a fire that destroyed much of the museum. Do you folks remember when that happened in Dallas? It was pretty catastrophic. But it's open again and thriving. This, as well as the dramatic increase in extreme weather events, sparked an interest and involvement in disaster preparedness and emergency response that continues today. And as such, she is a board member of the Texas Cultural Emergency Response Alliance and a Texas Heritage Responder, as well as a National Heritage Responder. Her client base includes museums, galleries, private collectors, antique dealers, and many other cultural institutions. So without further ado, I give you Laura Pate. She's going to offer us a fascinating kind of behind-the-scenes glimpse into this very important part of museum practice and art collecting, which many of us may not be aware of or never have really had a chance to learn more about. So Laura, thank you.
Thank you. Hello. Okay, let's see, make sure I'm all set up here. I'm going to say a lot of the things you've already said, but my name is Laura Pate. I'm an art conservator and the owner of Brown Mountain Art Restoration on Henderson Avenue here in Dallas, and I've owned the business for over 25 years. I have a small team of incredibly talented women. From left to right, this is Kathy Robinson Hayes, Amy Dobson, me, and Jennifer Shrestha. We have a combined total of 80 years of experience in the field. We conserve and restore paintings, porcelains, ceramics, gilded frames and mirrors, antique furniture, glass and crystal, art objects of all kinds. Some are very valuable, and others have more historical or sentimental significance. We also restore larger works of art, whether it be interior or exterior murals, sculptures, mosaics, or gold leaf in churches. It's wonderful work being surrounded by so many beautiful things, but I have to say the thing we love best about what we do is, regardless of whether it's a priceless oil painting or a porcelain figurine passed down from a great aunt, every item entrusted to our care has a story to tell. We love finding out the meaning and history of each piece we work on. Today, I'd like to talk to you about the history of porcelain and ceramic restoration, how and why it started, how it's evolved, and how we at Brown Mountain do the work we do. Hopefully, it'll give you a greater understanding of what we do and why it's important. So, I'm going to start today by showing you an image of a beautiful Imari bowl. It's about 18 inches in diameter, and if you look closely, you can see it's been restored previously. The bowl was originally in several pieces, and someone glued it together and painted over the chips and cracks. It has been covered in overpaint that was at one time, it may have matched the original finish, but now has yellowed with age and the paint is peeling away. Some of the colors have changed over time as well. This old restoration is fairly typical of repairs from the past. Many repairs to porcelains and pottery before the 1980s were done with materials that led to shrinking, chipping, and discoloration. Here are some examples of old repairs we've seen in our studio. The handle on the picture on the left has been overpainted in order to hide several breaks. The white paint has yellowed over time, and on the right you see the foot of a Majolica garden seat, and it's been secured with staples or rivets. This Majolica piece had a hole in it that was filled with cement as its repair, and cement is not easy to reverse. All of these repairs were done without much thought to the preservation of the original piece itself. Often we as restorers and conservators are faced with potentially damaging a piece by removing these old repairs. So now our goal is to provide a treatment for damaged art that is easily reversible, so that as the repairs age, they can be removed safely and repaired again. The ethics of the care of historic objects has evolved significantly in the last 40 years or so. What was once thought of as a trade for anyone who was somewhat handy with tools has evolved into a serious discipline. Here's another image of an umbrella stand that's been glued previously, and the adhesive has turned yellow and brittle. 20th century ceramics restoration or conservation didn't develop into a profession that offered real training until the 1960s. There were and still are many how-to manuals and YouTube videos in circulation with even more recipes for adhesives, fillers, and paints. Most of these recipes are considered obsolete because of their lack of durability and or lack of reversibility. They've been replaced by new improved synthetic materials because of their ease of application and their reversibility. So I want to talk to you about the beginnings of restoration and how repairs have evolved through the years, and I'll show you some newer repair methods that are being used by restorers and conservators today. Creating decorative and utilitarian objects from clay is one of the most ancient of human activities, an important part of everyday life since the dawn of civilization. Rare are the places on earth where we can't find evidence of the skills of ancient potters. They were artists who worked to make everyday life easier or make their world more beautiful. These distant ancestors were historians and storytellers. It's through their surviving work that we know them and what their lives were like, and often what they believed to be beautiful. The earliest known ceramic objects were made by our distant human ancestors who lived during the Upper Paleolithic period. Among these objects were those discovered at Dolní Věstonice in what is now the modern Czech Republic. This is the Venus of Dolny Vestinus, a statue of a nude female dating from between 29,000 and 25,000 BCE. It was made by molding a mixture of clay and powdered bone. It's only 4 inches high, and it's an Earth Mother figure, representing the female as the giver of life. It was found among other clay figures, including bears, horses, and owls. Now, the oldest known pottery vessels were made in China about 17,500 to 18,000 years ago. These pottery shards were found in a cave in the Hunan province. Other researchers claim that the oldest pots were found in a cave in Japan. Here's an image of a Jaman pot, which has been hand-built with the coil method. Still, others claim the oldest pots were found among the Amur River in Russia. This is an Amur River pottery shard. These artifacts have been dated to about 16,500 years old. I think it's interesting that the oldest known ceramic objects, like the Venus, were decorative and not utilitarian. I guess it could be that ancient peoples were first interested in creating beauty and influencing the natural world around them, not just in creating bowls and tools. Ceramics are both remarkably durable and terribly fragile. Although a vessel may survive for 10,000 years, it rarely survives in its original condition. It survives in fragments, a victim of the world's hard edges and the tyranny of time. In circumstances where ceramic objects were seen to be highly prized, owing to either scarcity, artistic merit, or the desire to have a utilitarian object used again, it was inevitable that various forms of restoration or repair be developed. It's not known exactly when artists began to make repairs to ceramic objects, but the oldest known repairs held in the British Museum date from around 7000 BC. Let's talk about the restoration process. The greatest challenges of the restorer has always been the reconstruction of broken pieces, the fabrication of missing pieces, or in some cases, the disguising of blemishes and the touching in of paint loss. Over the centuries, many techniques and materials have been used in these efforts. We'll talk about adhesives first. Through trial and error, a wide range of organic materials have been used to join broken pieces. Early attempts to restore broken objects include the use of various plant juices, such as garlic and mulberry, tree saps, and gums. Others have used fish and animal hide glues. The earliest form of adhesive is thought to have been bitumen, which is a sticky, dark, naturally occurring substance known as tar. As an adhesive and a sealant, it was so effective it was used to waterproof pots. Traces of bitumen can be found on ancient artifacts today, but because of its dark brown color, it's unsightly. It's also difficult to remove completely. Chinese manuscripts describe adhesives for the repair of porcelain, which include egg whites, glutinous rice, wheat gluten and lime, and bamboo resin. An English publication in 1861 cited the use of boiled Gloucester cheese combined with quicklime or orange shellac as a means of bonding ceramics. Concoctions blending brandy and gum mastic have also been recommended. Wax and wax mixtures were widely used as adhesives by Egyptians and Romans and are still used today in some museums. More often, wax products are used as a filler in wood objects and as a lining material for paintings. These products are appreciated for their reversibility. However, this lining of a painting shows how wax can discolor the linen on the back. Also, even though a wax lining can be reversed, it's next to impossible to remove wax from between the fibers of lining materials, which can affect future treatments. Animal glues have been used to join ceramic pieces since early times. However, since they are readily soluble in water and soften in heat, they're susceptible to environmental extremes. Shellac has been used in the restoration of ceramics in the Far East from the 7th century onward. A second cousin to other natural resins like myrrh and frankincense, shellac is a substance secreted by the female lac bug on the bark of trees in the forests of India and Thailand. Because it's very difficult to remove and can cause staining, shellac is seldom used today except as a filler or retouching medium. Now, although it seems that most cultures have been interested in hiding their mistakes, Japan has a type of repair that is highly visible. Golden joinery, also called kintsugi, is thought of as an art unto itself. For over 300 years, Japanese artisans have been mending their precious ceramic pieces with lacquer as an adhesive. Then, finely powdered gold is sprinkled onto the sticky lacquer seams to illuminate the repairs. The breaks are actually highlighted by the gold in order to show where the piece has been repaired. The Japanese believe there is beauty in imperfection. They found that pieces with these repairs made them more interesting. In fact, by the 17th century, some pieces were thought to have been broken on purpose to increase their aesthetic and commercial value. Brown Mountain gets many requests to reproduce this technique on broken objects, and we do provide a repair that's in the kintsugi style. Here are a couple examples. All right, so adhesive alternatives. Adhesives were not the only method of joining broken pottery pieces. Among the most widely used methods for joining broken pieces over the past 400 years have been mechanical bindings. Two of these methods include lacing and riveting. Now, lacing involved drilling holes along each side of a break. Then, a binding material was passed through the holes, not unlike lacing a boot. Once the bindings were tightened, the result was usually unsightly, but often returned the piece to its original function. The earliest ties were made of reed or straw. Greek artisans bound pots with lead ties or wire coated with solder. You can see in this drawing, the wire is twisted together on the underside and the excess is cut off. The wire is then covered with solder and filed smooth. I love these examples of lacing. An improvement over the lacing technique was the use of rivets, a method that had its origins in China. Again, holes are drilled on either side of the break, but not all the way through, just deep enough to support a rivet. Rivets are made of brass or iron. Metal lacing from hole to hole bound the broken pieces together. Rivets were in general use in China in the 17th century and spread to Europe by the 19th century, where it became the standard method of repair. Riveting is still practiced today, but to a much lesser extent. There were many creative ways that metal was used for repairs. Here are some great examples of old repairs using metal bands and braces. A common repair practice in the beginning of the Victorian era was doweling. Now, for ceramics, holes are drilled on both sides of the break, and a dowel was inserted and packed in place, often with plaster, shellac, or even newspaper. Here are some images of pieces brought to us that have been doweled, and the repairs have failed. In the past, dowels were sometimes made from such unlikely materials as bones, knitting needles, safety pins, or hairpins. Now, doweling is still practiced today, usually with stainless steel pins in existing holes. The steel offers strength while remaining pliable. Another unusual repair method involves a kind of aesthetic cannibalization. The repair is made by replacing missing pieces with a similar piece from another object. This was a common practice in dynastic Egypt. Well into the 20th century, fragments or entire sections from another vessel replaced missing pieces and filled losses. The pieces that were available were often cut or filed down, causing more damage to both pieces in an effort to create one completed object. So in order to make new, more suitable repairs to previously repaired objects, it's absolutely imperative to remove all traces of old adhesives, fills, and overpainting from a piece before a new repair can be undertaken. Here are some images of objects with old repairs that need to be removed. In order to begin the proper reconstruction of a porcelain or ceramic piece, like this silver old Paris vase or our Amari bowl from the first slide, all previous repairs should be dismantled first. This often creates more work than is at first apparent. Sometimes we can spend an entire day or more just removing stubborn adhesive, paint, or lacquer. In this picture, that is completely covered over in old lacquer. And so you can see we've cleaned half of the piece just so you can tell the difference. Excess glue and fill material is often left on a repaired piece once it's cured and results in lumpy seams and smears on undamaged areas. Pieces have often been painted over in excess, even when the damage may be a small chip or a single break. I don't know if you can see it in this one, but here's the repair right here and right here. See how the yellow is much more dull. Okay, now I have to find my spot. Let's see. Okay. So looking at the Dresden Angel on the left, you can see the entire chest was painted to cover a crack on the neck and the shoulder. Then there's the image on the right. The white overpaint on the handle has been applied with an airbrush, and the paint has spattered on the gold band. Even if the color were to match better, this is a very telltale sign of an old repair. Once all of this has been removed, either mechanically or with the proper solvent, the adhesive between the joints must be meticulously removed. This often requires the assistance of a scalpel if no proper solvents can be found. Every bit of old glue has to come off because even the tiniest particle left in place will prevent the making of a clean new join. All overpaint must be removed as well, and we have to avoid all areas where there's any on-glaze decoration that has not been fired in, such as enamels or gilding or areas of flaking or degraded glaze. Old paint must sometimes be removed using solvents as well. There are a variety of solvent options: distilled water, white spirits, acetone, commercial paint strippers. We test solvents in small discrete areas first, always. Sometimes they're applied by poultice. Next, we remove all previous fills. We have to be so careful during this stage because the result is often the coming apart of joins. This is usually done by mechanical methods, like the use of a sharp blade, a scalpel, or a needle. Once all old repairs have been reversed, we go on to the reconstruction process. So there is actually a method to reconstruction. All your pieces have to be laid out on a table to determine what piece will go where, and more importantly, in what order, before the actual gluing process takes place. Gluing pieces together is actually my very favorite thing. So I've got some examples of reconstructing some pretty cool art pieces. I'm going to show the short video here. It's a gorgeous Acoma pot that was broken in over 75 pieces. And a client called and said that 3 large native pots fell off his high shelf. So I had to go to his house and I collected all of the pieces, separated the different shards according to clay body color, and I reconstructed all 3 pots. So here's a short video of that process with one of the pots. Let me see if I can play it from here. And it's real short. Let's see, maybe I can't. No. Hold on a minute. Okay. This kind of slowly came together. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't surprise you to know I love jigsaw puzzles. And then here are some images of each pot before and after. So like this Cuciti pot was, I want to say it was in like 150 pieces. And then this Akama pot. And then, oh, this other Cuciti pot. So I have to say that this was probably the funnest project I've ever done. So I'm going to show one more little video. This one will give you a better idea of the actual gluing process. Laid it all out, put each piece together in a specific order. And the doorbell rings, and then I have to leave. Yep. Yep. Okay. So, again?
What was the tub on the side that you were setting them in? Was that part of the process?
Yeah. It's to hold it in place. So it was just a big box of, well, we used to have rice, and then we went on to BBs. It's something heavy that, helps you hold it in place. So, let's see.
How long did that take you to do that?
It took a day, I guess. Yeah, because the doorbell would ring and the phone would ring, and yeah, that one took a day. The other ones took like a month each. So, let's see. Okay, so here's a series of photos. I'm sorry they're not better, but this picture came into the studio in so many pieces, and these images kind of show it slowly coming together. And then once they're put together, you can see the impact spot where the cracks radiate out from an origin point. So when something falls on the floor, it hits in a certain spot and all the breaks radiate out from there. So so you can see it right there. And usually where the impact spot is, the pieces are too shattered to use. So let's see. And then this lamp was brought in by a client who tried to glue his own piece together without paying proper attention to the order in which shards should have been glued. So notice the hole left in the center and the extra pieces that won't fit into place. There is nothing more frustrating than reconstructing a piece with all the seams perfectly lined up only to have a single shard left that won't fit. In this case, we had to reverse all of his work and start over. So once you've properly glued pieces together, you have to give them time to cure. So depending on what adhesive is used and the cure time, each piece is properly fit into place and must be held in place with either clamps, tapes, or straps until fully cured. So on this previous one, actually, we used to use sand in these boxes to hold pieces in place, but we have evolved since then. Because, boy, that makes a mess if it spills or something like that. Let's see. Okay, so once a ceramic or porcelain piece has been properly reconstructed, you've got to consider in what way you want to proceed with the repair. The piece is intact, but is that enough? What's the purpose of the repair? Preservation for the family, resale, museum exhibition. These are all options to consider depending on the piece in question. So for instance, this is a cookie jar lid with a family recipe handwritten on the underside. If we removed the old repair, the piece would go with it, or the recipe would go with it. Our client decided to do the best possible repair to the top, but we had to blend it into the old restoration on the bottom because we couldn't remove the old repair without affecting the underside where the recipe was. So thankfully, we were able to preserve the whole thing. This one is a client brought in his wife's one-of-a-kind, irreplaceable Grateful Dead mug, and he accidentally broke it, and he didn't want the repair to show for fear it would make her angry at him every time she saw it. He wanted to do a seamless repair. So the purpose of each piece has to be explored before determining treatment. It has a history of its own, and the cracks and chips that remain once it's glued together could be considered a sign of that history. A mother could pass down a piece to her college-bound daughter, along with the story of its damage and subsequent reconstruction. So then there's conservation. Museums typically conserve an object rather than restore it. Conservation involves minimally invasive treatment, and it has to be reversible. Therefore, it's usually slightly visible. A conservator focuses more on preservation as opposed to aesthetics. For this particular piece, we reconstructed the pieces, filled the missing areas, then painted only on fabricated material. There is no overpainting onto the original material. If one chooses to do a seamless repair and make the cracks and chips disappear, as is typical of full restoration, certain facts should be understood. Restoration can only imitate manufacture. It cannot reproduce it in the same way it was originally created. Restorers can only focus on the illusion of the original look of a piece because it's impossible to recreate the manufacturing process. For an invisible repair, all chips and cracks are filled. Any damage is camouflaged as best as possible. Filling losses is of utmost importance because no matter how well you can match the color of a piece, a repair will still be detectable if the crack shows or a filled area is low or high. Okay, back to the restoration process itself. The following materials are commonly used for the filling of voids. Which product you use depends on a number of variables. Once an area is filled, it must then be smooth and level to the original material. We often use micromesh. In some cases, the surface of the object being repaired is so fragile that the fill can only be smoothed out with a damp cotton swab. Much care should be taken when smoothing out a filled area. A scratched glazed surface is a sure sign of an irresponsible restorer. Great care should be taken not to harm the original surface during treatment. Restorers have gotten a lot of bad press because of the few who cause damage to a piece while promising. If there are missing pieces, they'll be fabricated. Fabrication of missing pieces often requires researching the object to figure out what it originally looked like. Books, magazines, auction catalogs, and the internet are great resources. Often one can cast pieces from one of a pair in order to get a positive result. In the case of this terracotta basket, we were able to make a mold of the handle on the other side and cast it. Then it was painted to match the original finish. Here are a series of images showing how we made a mold from a hand from one figure, cast it, and were able to attach it to another figure. A mold is made of the existing hand and then a cast is made from the mold. Plaster, self-hardening clay, and bulked cabosil are great casting materials. Once the hand has been secured and the break line filled and smoothed, it will be painted. Okay, so here's a series of images of a majolica plate with a large chip at the top of the fin. We fabricated the tip with a composite material. You can see it on the image on the right. Notice the number of steps it takes to get to the end result. We start with a base coat and add several layers of color in order to build up to the true color of the piece. We even paint or draw in small cracks to imitate details in the glazed surface. All of this provides the illusion of depth that one gets with a glazed piece of porcelain. Paint is applied to a piece with a paintbrush or with an airbrush. often a combination of both. Finally, a coat of glaze is applied to the repair to protect the work and to imitate the original finish. In the past, lacquer or shellac was used. Because these finishes often yellow, they are rarely used today. Currently, several non-yellowing synthetic finishes are available. Often, a conservator's wax will do the trick. Once a piece has been properly conserved or restored, whether it be ceramic, wood, or a painting, one can enjoy it for many years to come. In addition, the repairs will be easily reversible without damage to the original piece. Technology is always changing and improving. Therefore, it should always be possible to remove or improve on existing repairs. Our job as restorers and conservators is to help preserve these art objects without causing them further damage so that future generations can appreciate them. And so we have the image of the Amari bowl from the beginning of the lecture. It's come full circle. Yet it's far from over. In fact, happily, the story continues because we have extended the life of this piece for who knows how many more years, maybe generations. Once again, the function and beauty that a long ago artist envisioned has been restored. And that's what restoration and conservation are all about, to bring lost beauty and utility into the world again. Thank you for your time today. I also have more before and after picture slides if we, want to look at them, but if you have any questions, I'd love to take them, and we can also discuss the things on the table too, so.
Yes, and please raise your hand so I can get you the microphone, and please hold it close to your mouth and speak clearly. Who was first? Joanne?
I'd like to know how restoration impacts the value of an important piece.
I get that question all the time. And what affects the value of the piece is that it breaks. And that really affects the value, right? So when you restore it or conserve it, it only can bring that value up. Now, it will never be as valuable as it was without being broken. But yeah, it does increase the value somewhat, and it also depends on the restorer. I mean, if you bring your painting in to be cleaned and someone over cleans it or removes glazes, then that's going to decrease the value. So you just have to make sure you get the right person. So yeah, I would say there are a couple different factors involved in that answer, but really, sometimes I get people in that say, oh, well, if you restore a piece, it loses its value. And it's like, well, really the piece's value has been lost when it's damaged. So we're only trying to help bring it up. So does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Just a quick question. Why the name Brown Mountain?
Okay, well, that's a really long story. The previous owner of Brown Mountain, who is also my mentor and very dear friend, her name is Libby Brown. And so she kind of envisioned this amazing life for herself and thought, I'm going to do art restoration, and I'm going to do it in Dallas because I can make a living here, although I'd really rather be in Colorado. And so she bought this building, and she created this beautiful space with pine trees and large stones in the front and called it Brown Mountain Restoration. And I began working for her once I graduated from college, and I apprenticed under her. And eventually she sold me the business, and she moved to Colorado. And so she just kind of envisioned her future, and I have always loved and respected her and loved watching her attain her ultimate goal. And I thought, I can't change the name. That's just, it's just got too many good feelings associated with it. And she also had an amazing reputation. So, of course, wanted to keep that. So.
Thank you. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
You mentioned that you're also restoring paintings.
Mhm.
And I'm curious, I mean, there's different paintings with varying levels of details. And sometimes when I'm in museum and I look at paintings, just regular paintings, I just wonder, I mean, how did they paint these paintings? There's so much detail, like what kind of brushes do they use? So my question would be, in your experience, if you have to restore maybe a somewhat detailed repainting where, you know, maybe scratched or damaged in various ways, I mean, how, you know, how do you go about restoring it? I mean, in terms of figuring out what paints, is it oil paints or acrylic paints, and
Sure.
like how to mix it, the paints, and then what tools you're using potentially. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a hobby painter, if you will.
Mhm.
I don't paint high detail, but I mean, even without trying to restore anything, just getting some detail is really hard. I mean, what does it take to acquire the skill that you need to actually become an art restorer or conservator?
Wow, that's
I
such a
know
great
it's kind of a
question.
loaded,
Yeah.
compound loaded question, sorry.
Well, I mean, I am not a paintings conservator. I have Amy Dobson as our paintings conservator, and I can tell you, we've worked together. We've worked together for 25 years now, and she just keeps getting better and better, and I think it comes with experience, and just no project is the same. And so being exposed to different situations and just practicing with different tools. I did bring a couple things. We use like pigment powders and varnishes and different binders, and you play around, and you have, and that's the beauty of having your own studios. You do tests and you evaluate and you try different brushes, and you some materials work better on some paintings and not on others. So you just have to, I guess you just research and experiment. Yeah, and with the materials being reversible, you can do that. It's like, oh my gosh, that looks terrible. Take that off. And you take it off and you try again, you know. But as far as the artists and how they do it, I think it's incredible. Some of the things we see are absolutely incredible. And I don't know if there's an answer for that, because if we had an answer, everybody would be a great painter, right? So I don't know, but that's a really great question. Yes, Michael.
Does each person of the four have an area of expertise, or?
Yes, actually. I mean, I'm kind of a generalist. I feel like I have to be as the business owner. And so I know a little bit about everything. And like I said in the talk, I love reconstructing things. That is by far my favorite thing, to glue things together. And again, Amy does the paintings. She also paints on furniture, and she does a lot of like unusual objects. She's the brave one. And then Kathy Robinson Hayes, she's an incredible painter. Some of you guys may have heard of her. She's well known locally. And she has been doing decorative arts painting on the pieces. She worked for Libby, so she's been with me. She's been there longer than me. So I would say she's been there since 85 doing this, and there is nobody better. She is the best. So that is her specialty. And then Jennifer, she's the newbie. She's been with us 7 years. And she does framing. And we don't do framing per se, but if we bring in pieces that need to be cleaned and reframed, then I refer them to her, and then, we kind of coordinate that way. And she also paints on objects as well. So.
Oh, question. Oh.
Yeah.
Back to the 3 native pots that like were smashed up.
Yes.
Is there a little story? I feel like there's a backstory to what happened there. Earthquake, cat fight.
I wish it were that dramatic. So the client called me one day, and he was devastated, and he had put these 3 pieces on top of a shelf in his basement like work area. And so and the floor was tile, and the cabinet or the shelf that it was put on, that they were put at the very, very top, like on top of it, not even in the shelves. And he had hired a workman to come out and repair the doors at the bottom of the shelf, and he didn't think to pull the pots down. So as he's repairing, the workman is repairing the hinges or something, he kind of bumped it with his hip, and they all three just came tumbling down and smashed on the floor on top of each other. And so there were maybe 500 pieces sitting on the ground, all mixed up. And he called me very upset, and he was like, do I just put them in a, sweep them up and put them in a big bag and bring them to you? And I was like, no, don't touch them. I'll come to you. So I ran to his house, because if he had done that, it would have even been harder to separate them out. But the way they were, I could at least mostly know that like this general pile was one pot. And then I could compare the clay body types and the decorative work and kind of finish separating them out.
Well, it was most impressive.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's just from.
Well, I will say that my staff was like, are you crazy? And I'm like, I can't wait.
Do you do jigsaw puzzles?
I do. I'm working on one right now.
Last time we spoke, I think you said you were working on something with gold leaf.
We often do. Let me think what you were referring to. Can you tell me more? I mean, we do a lot of gold leaf work.
How long ago was it that we spoke? It was
less than a month ago.
Yeah.
Let me think. I remember. Okay, it was coming up for auction. I don't even know if so I won't say an auction house, but an auction house contacted me, and they were having an auction in like 5 days, and it was a gold leaf sconce about this tall, from the early 1900s, and it had broken in half, and they had called and said, can you fix this in time for the auction? And I said, no, but you can put a picture in the auction, and by the time, it comes time to ship it off, or whoever purchases it, as long as they know it's restored, then we can have it within, 6 weeks. And so we did it that way, and it worked out. And it turned out really good. I was stressed about it that day. I think we were talking.
Can one clean certain things themselves? For example, Grandma died, you're cleaning out the house. There's a painting you always admired, but Grandpa smoked in there, and it just needs to be cleaned. Is that something one can do?
I would not recommend it.
Okay.
Just to be safe. And a lot of times we get paintings in where people have tried to clean them themselves, and they've watched some video on YouTube or something, and we've gotten some really crazy stories. We've had people bring paintings in that they've tried to clean with a potato, like cut a potato in half. And I don't know that. I mean, I don't know where they got that, but also bread. I've heard bread.
I've heard the bread one.
Yeah. And then water, which everyone thinks water is, very mild, but it's actually a very harsh chemical. You don't want to use water on your paintings. If you're going to clean your painting, I would just dust it, dry dust. And if you really feel like it needs a cleaning, bring it in and let us evaluate it. And then we can tell you, one, if it can be cleaned safely, and then give you, a bid.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry.
Thank you. We're done.
Have you guys ever worked for any museum here in Dallas, or maybe outside, like in another state, and clean things for them?
Yeah, we have. I just finished a big project for the Crow collection. I looked over there and did minor repairs to their Latin American collection. before it was moved over to the new building at UTA. We've actually, yeah, and then of course the Museum for Biblical Art. Mostly galleries and things like that, because museums usually have their own conservators on staff.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure. Yeah, UTD, sorry, not UTA. Sorry.
That's beautiful.
Yes.
I am not gonna record this, 'cause I may be wrong. Did you work on any of the restoration projects at Fair Park?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, let's see. After the big pipe bursting situation that happened a few years ago with the big Snowmageddon, they had their sprinkler system, the pipes burst, and at Hollow State, and completely flooded the basement. And they had several furniture pieces down there, and lots of cabinetry where they did displays of different things. And anyway, these cabinets were in pretty bad shape. And so I, along with Peter Goodchild, who's a fantastic furniture restorer, helped me repair 16 cabinets, marquetry cabinets. And we were able to use one of the cabinets that was so badly damaged, we decided to use as like a parts car, and pulled veneer off of it to use, so we would have all original material to use for the other pieces. And so that turned out great. And then shortly after that, we helped, or I helped gild the Tejas Warrior, and that was really fun. There's a video about it too on YouTube somewhere, but that was great. I had a very small part in that. It was with Robert Alden Marshall.
Okay, and this was in response to my question about doing restoration work at Fair Park in Dallas. What are some other kind of really large scale or maybe high profile projects that you've worked on? Because I know you've done large murals and
Yeah. We just finished a project this last, I think it was in July. We finished working on a mural in El Paso, and it was for Fort Bliss, and they had a very large plaster mural that they had uncovered probably a decade or more ago that had just been sitting there. They were trying to decide what to do with it. I think I have a picture of it. Let me see if I can find it. But it was painted in 1942 by an Austrian, well, he was an American soldier, but he was Austrian. He painted it as a thank you to America for letting him help fight in the war. And it is one of the first murals that depicts different races, both men and women, all in the same, different socioeconomic statuses, all in the same mural. And it was in terrible disrepair, and it took us, I want to say, 8 months to do. And it's a really, really lovely piece. Let me see if I can find it. I'm going to zoom past these. But these are all projects we've worked on. I have a lot of slides in here. Well, it's down here somewhere, but it's incredible. Here we go. This is the Wilson House ceiling mural. We did that. That's a Dallas project, and that is a mural on canvas adhered to a ceiling. Here's the El Paso mural. So when they uncovered this mural, all of this is paint loss here and here. And some of these faces are almost completely gone. And so
It's been painted over, like, or painted the wall?
yeah. So the soldier painted this with house paints as a thank you. And this was located in the hospital library. And so what was once the hospital library, now it's an abandoned building. Yes. And so they asked us to come in, and we used the old black and white images to recreate some of these faces. And you can still see where the repairs are. We couldn't make it totally disappear, but and we didn't want to. We just wanted to mostly work on faces, and some of the map pieces were missing, and some of the wording up at the top we had to redo. But we were able to find some drawings of that he had done, sketches that he had done of this gun, so we could recreate that the way that it was originally intended. And that turned out really nice too. But
Did you do the work in place?
yeah. So we would go. I went to El Paso for 1 week out of every month from January till the end of August. And I would bring, so the first time I went, I brought an architectural conservator, and we stabilized the plaster. And the second time I went with another conservator to just stabilize the paint. And then the next time I went with Amy, and she and I started working on touching in losses. And then we just kept going back until it got done. And it was so much fun. Super, super. Once I got over the stress of the structural stability part. But after that, and it was amazing. El Paso is so, so windy. And so these old windows, I mean, just dust comes flying in while you're working, in the cracks too. Dust was coming in the cracks. It was quite an experience, but it turned out really good. And I think that they're making this building a visitor center. I think Biden last year declared a national monument there, and I will have to look it up what it is. But I think it's like some kind of missile range or something. Does anybody know this? I'll look it up.
White Fort Bliss is where the rocket schools are.
So there is an area that people can't go to necessarily, but it's considered a national monument as of last year. And so they're going to make this, last time I heard it was like a 90% chance, they're going to make this building the visitor center for that national monument, which will be really nice because then people will be able to see that. Because I love that mural and I love the story behind it. And then, let's see. This one, these are some pieces we worked on in Frisco. This piece is in front of their city hall, and it has all these dichroic pieces that, shimmer in the sun, and they also have a bunch of bells, and it rings. And a lot of the bells were broken, and the dichroic pieces were cracked, so we replaced all of them. Not every single one, but all of the broken ones and all the bells, much to the chagrin of the employees of City Hall. They were not crazy about the bell sounds, but they were like, oh yeah, that's how that was supposed to sound. Not that happy about it. Here's some more City of Frisco stuff. Let's see. Oh, I guess that's it. Okay, yeah. Well, let me do
Question
this.
for you.
Okay, anything else? Yeah.
Are you are conservators a cooperative group, or are they do they fight each other for stuff?
Do we fight each other? Well, I can say, there are many organizations that you can be a member of as an art conservator. And and I would say the the most well-known one is the American Institute for Conservation. And you can just be a member, or you can be you can work to achieve a status in that group. And then if you have that designation, which is called a professional associate, it's about to change to professional member. But if you have that, then cities, public art programs, and government, federal, state organizations can hire you to do things. Often you aren't considered to have the proper training if you haven't gotten your professional associate status or higher. But is there competition? I would say yes. I kind of pride myself on collaborating with other conservators. I have never believed that I know everything about everything. Like I said, I'm a generalist. I know a little bit about a lot of things. And when I see somebody who's really good at something, that's the person I want to work with. And that's the person I want to know and learn from. And so that's another reason why I feel like I have the staff that I have, and they've been with me for so long, because they're really good at what they do, and I respect what they do, and I try not to step on toes. We all have our lanes, and I've made, I would say in the last 5 years, some really, really great professional collaborations and friendships with other conservators who are willing to work with me, and we have achieved some really cool things. So yes, I would say that there can be some challenges or competition, I guess is a better way to put it, but it doesn't have to be that way. I choose not to make it be that way.
Anybody else? Any comments, questions?
I would love if you could tell us more about all the things that you brought with you today.
Oh, sure. Yeah, and you guys are welcome to come up and look at it. This actually is a painting that was in a fire. And so this side has smoke damage, and this side's been cleaned. Now, I did clean this a long time ago, so it probably could use another little cleaning on this side, but you can still see quite a difference. This stuff is just some gold leaf and gold powders, some mica powders and things that I brought just so you could see the difference between the different shades of gold and how you can tone things. I've got imitation silver, imitation gold. I've got 23 karat gold somewhere, and white gold, as well as some powders here you're welcome to look at. This is a piece that was actually donated to Brown Mountain. A client brought it in, and she wanted to restore it, and she had some testing done on it. It's actually almost 2,000 years old. Yeah, you can look at the paperwork when you come up here. So this is one of these things where I'm like, well, one day I'm going to glue this. That's on my list, my long list. I've had it now for about 15 years, but one day I'm going to glue this. But anyway, she decided she didn't want to repair it. She had another one. And so she said, why don't you use it and take it, if you do a lecture, or keep it, or whatever. So that's what this is, and I think it's gorgeous. This is an example of the powders that we use to restore paintings. Kremer Pigments is like my favorite store in the whole world because of all the gorgeous colors they have. And they come out with different boxes every couple of years. So this one was just fun because it had a lot of bright colors. This is just more material about us. And then this over here, I found at an antique store in Hot Springs, Arkansas. And I just thought it was so neat. I had to buy it, even though I would never use any of these tools or materials. It's just it's a vintage traveling kit for furniture restorers. And so these are all the pigments on the sides here, and they've got shellac and lacquer and this knife heating elements and brushes and tools, and I just loved it so much I had to buy it. So I thought it was fun to look at. And you're free to come up and look at it and touch things and whatever you would like to do. It's fine. You're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much, Laura. It was fascinating.
Good, thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
You're welcome.